They asked him if he was gay. He smiled, he wore a dress, he waved a pride flag, and he said nothing. No words, no labels, no explanations. And somehow that silence made millions of people feel seen. This isn't just a pop star's story. It's how Harry Styles created a cultural shift by doing what most artists are too afraid to do. Be gentle, be honest, be yourself. Follow me. This might change the way you see masculinity forever. Before the world knew his name, before the Grammy wins, the Vogue covers, or the glitter-covered tour stages, he was simply Harry. A boy from Holmes Chapel, a quiet village in the English countryside where life moved slowly and dreams felt like they belonged to someone else. Harry Edward Styles was born in February 1994, and from the outside his childhood might have looked like any other small-town story. But underneath, there were cracks. When Harry was 7, his parents divorced. And if you've ever been a child in a house that suddenly falls silent, not peaceful, but hollow, you understand how that changes a person. He once said that he remembers it clearly, that it wasn't something he ever got over, just something he learned to carry. That kind of early hurt doesn't always show, but it leaves you a little more tuned in, a little softer in a world that often rewards hardness. Maybe that's why Harry always seemed to listen with his whole face. Like he wasn't just hearing, but feeling. He grew up surrounded by women. His mom Anne, his older sister Gemma, and later his stepfather Robin, who became a steady and kind presence in his life. That environment, emotional, expressive, occasionally chaotic, gave Harry something a lot of men aren't taught to value early on: empathy. And now, the bakery. Fans love this part. Before fame, Harry worked part-time at Mandeville's bakery in town. It's almost impossible not to imagine. A teenage Harry, sleeves rolled up, handing you a bag of bread rolls with that signature grin. Locals remember him being sweet, polite, just cheeky enough to be charming without getting in trouble. And while it sounds like a fun fact today, it says something real, that long before the headlines, he knew how to make people feel good. Not through a show, just by showing up as himself. Then 2010 happened. Harry, just 16, stepped onto the X Factor UK stage. Cardigan, scarf, and nerves. He sang Isn't She Lovely by Stevie Wonder. And no, it wasn't a flawless audition, but there was something about him, a glow, a warmth, a sense that he wasn't to impress anyone, he was just being Harry. Simon Cowell saw it, the audience felt it, and whether Harry knew it or not, something had just begun. Now, you probably know how this goes. He didn't make it far as a solo contestant, but the producers had a bigger plan. They grouped 5 young guys together, Harry, Zayn, Liam, Niall, and Lewis, and called them One Direction. And just like that, a new chapter opened, loudly. If you were around in the early 2010s, you remember. One Direction wasn't just a boy band, it was an era, the kind that printed itself on notebooks, playlists, bedroom walls. 5 boys with no choreography and too much hair gel somehow triggering a global phenomenon. And Harry? He was the one people gravitated toward. Not because he fought for the spotlight, but because he didn't seem to need it. He just fit there, effortlessly. From What Makes You Beautiful to Little Things to Story of My Life, the hits kept coming, but it wasn't just music. For millions of young fans, especially girls and queer teens, One Direction was a lifeline. A soundtrack to growing up, a place to belong when the world felt confusing. And Harry, with his soft voice and eyes that always seemed to be holding a secret, became the symbol of something gentler. Something safe. But fame always comes with instructions. Be the charming one. Don't ask questions. Keep things light. Don't be too strange, too sensitive, too you. And Harry? He didn't push back loudly. He didn't rant. He didn't rebel. He just made quiet edits to the script. He wore rings. He played with patterns. He gave interviews that didn't quite answer the question, and in doing so, opened the door to something more honest. Without ever declaring anything, he let his presence ask the question, why does this even need a label? While the world obsessed over chart numbers and shipping wars, Harry was watching, learning, not just how to be famous, but how to be free. And somewhere in the chaos, he started taking mental notes on how to build something of his own. So when the band announced its hiatus in 2015, fans broke down. And let's be honest, some of us are still not over it. But Harry? He exhaled. Not because he didn't love it, but because for the first time in 5 years, he could finally ask himself, who am I? Without the band, without the branding, without the box? That was the question that changed everything. Because what came next wasn't just a solo career, it was Harry Styles finally stepping into himself. Slowly, boldly, beautifully. He didn't rush it. He didn't try to outsing, outshine, or outgrow his past. Instead, he built something new from the inside out. And in 2017, he gave us his answer. Not in an interview, not in a headline, but in a song. Harry's self-titled debut album opened with Sign of the Times, and it wasn't what anyone expected. No trendy beats, no recycled pop formula. Instead, he delivered a 6-minute rock ballad that sounded like a cinematic throwback to the 70s, filled with grief, grandeur, and aching vulnerability. It was bold, it was haunting, and it was the clearest signal yet. Harry wasn't here to play it safe. He was here to say something. Gone was the sugary boy band energy. In its place stood a young artist who had sat with his silence long enough to understand what kind of sound felt true to him. Sign of the Times didn't just make waves. It told the world, I'm not here to repeat. I'm here to reveal. And people listened. But if his debut album was a statement, Fine Line in 2019 was a full-blown transformation. From the very first seconds of Lights Up, you could feel it. This wasn't a man questioning who he was anymore. This was a man embracing the mystery. Do you know who you are, he asks, not just of himself, but of us. And the video? Bare-chested, soaked in sweat and light, moving freely among men and women, not claiming space, just existing in it. It was fluid, playful, radiant, and it didn't need a single explanation. The album danced between joy and heartbreak, from the sweet vulnerability of Adore You to the cheeky sensuality of Watermelon Sugar, which, by the way, won him his first Grammy. Fine Line proved Harry could hold paradox in the palm of his hand. Masculine and feminine, loud and quiet, heartbroken and hopeful. And somehow, it all felt like him. What stood out wasn't just the music, it was the freedom. Harry wasn't just singing anymore. He was inviting people into a world where softness wasn't weakness, where color wasn't confusion, where love didn't come with conditions. And then came Harry's House in 2022, an album that felt like late-night conversations, warm lighting, and the kind of honesty that only shows up when no one's watching. As it was, the lead single was quieter than his previous hits, but somehow louder in meaning. A song about change, about disconnection, about growing into someone new while grieving the version of you that had to be left behind. And people felt it. Deeply. It became one of the most streamed songs of the year, topping charts, breaking records, playing in bedrooms and car rides across the world. And in 2023, Harry's House took home Album of the Year at the Grammys. But by then, it almost didn't matter, because Harry had already won something more lasting, a sense of self. Here's what makes him different. Through all the success, he never shouted for attention. He let the art do the talking. He didn't over-explain, didn't overshare, didn't oversell. And somehow that honesty, that quiet refusal to chase the noise, made people lean in even closer. There's something powerful about an artist who doesn't pretend to have it all figured out, who lets his questions become songs, who makes room for contradiction, confusion, color, and grace, all in one breath. Harry's solo career isn't just a musical evolution. It's an unfolding, one that's still in motion. But even as the music matured, something else began speaking even louder, long before he ever opened his mouth. The clothes. Harry didn't just sound different, he looked different. And no, I'm not talking about just a haircut or a new stylist. I'm talking about something deeper. The way he began using fashion not as a costume but as a conversation, a quiet rebellion, a kind of poetry written in fabric. At first it was subtle, a floral print suit here, a pair of heeled boots there. Maybe you noticed, maybe you didn't. But somewhere between Fine Line and Harry's House, something shifted, and suddenly his clothes weren't just outfits. They were statements. Now I know what you might be thinking, it's just fashion, what's the big deal? But think about this. How many mainstream male pop stars do you know who can walk onto a red carpet in a lace blouse, painted nails, pearl earrings, and not only survive the headlines, but redefine the moment. Harry didn't just wear these things, he owned them, effortlessly, casually, like he was saying, "Of course I'm wearing this, why wouldn't I?" And that quiet confidence, that unbothered self-expression, it spoke louder than any interview ever could. He started showing up in looks that challenged decades of gender norms. Hot pink suits, sheer blouses, wide-legged trousers and high-waisted glam rock pants, feather bows, ruffled shirts, sequin jumpsuits that shimmered like stage lights wrapped around his body, and it never felt like a performance. It felt like permission. Then came the Vogue cover. Harry Styles becomes the first solo male to appear on the cover of Vogue, not in a suit, not in something traditionally masculine, in a dress, a custom Gucci gown, light blue, flowing, layered with a black tuxedo jacket over the shoulders, delicate, powerful, effortless. The image was stunning and polarizing. Some called it iconic, others controversial. Some praised it as a new chapter in masculinity. Others panicked like the world had lost its mind. And you know what Harry did? Nothing. He didn't fight back. He didn't clap back. He didn't justify. He just smiled and moved on, like he always does. In interviews, when asked why he wore a dress, he gave the most Harry Styles answer possible: because clothes are there to have fun with. Simple, almost too simple. But in a world where people are still punished, bullied, even harmed for expressing themselves through clothing, that casual sentence became radical. Because here's the thing, what Harry wore wasn't about being provocative. It was about being free. He didn't label himself. He didn't plant a flag. He didn't say, "Look at me, I'm breaking boundaries." He just showed up, authentically, without asking permission. And by doing that, he gave us permission too, to wear the colors we love, to try on softness, to be glamorous without guilt, to question why masculinity was ever defined by khaki pants and silence in the first place. And let's not forget, Harry isn't the first to do this. He's part of a long lineage of rule breakers: David Bowie, Prince, Freddie Mercury, Kurt Cobain. But what Harry brought to this generation was visibility. To millions of young people who maybe hadn't seen someone like him doing it in this moment on this scale. He wasn't just blurring the lines, he was erasing the idea that lines needed to exist in the first place. I mean, think about it. What does masculine even mean when Harry can wear a pearl necklace and a sheer blouse on national television and still top the Billboard charts the next day? Is it still feminine if confidence is what makes it powerful? And can we really say fashion doesn't matter when a photo of one man in a dress could trigger global debates, op-eds, TikTok essays, and late-night punchlines? No, fashion matters. Not because of the fabric, but because of what it allows us to say without speaking. And Harry? He's been saying a lot, with silks, sequins, and silence. The best part? He never made it about himself. He didn't ask the world to dress like him. He just reminded people they could dress like themselves, louder, brighter, looser. And maybe that's why it matters so much. Because for every kid who's ever stared at their reflection and wondered if they were too much, for every boy who's ever wanted to paint his nails but hesitated, for every girl who felt more powerful in a blazer than in a dress, Harry didn't tell them what to wear. He just wore it first, and then kept walking. What's powerful about that isn't the fashion, it's the freedom. But here's what's even more powerful. Harry never claimed to be leading a movement. He simply aligned himself with the right side of one. And if you thought his outfits were expressive, wait until you see what he does when it comes to people. Because fashion might be personal, but allyship, that's where it gets universal. And if you followed Harry long enough, you'll notice something strange. He's never once stood on a stage and shouted, "I'm this," or "I'm that." He doesn't post long captions about identity or wear it like a badge. But somehow, you feel it. You feel that he's safe. You feel that he sees you. And more importantly, that he chooses to. Harry Styles has never labeled himself. Not once. And not because he's hiding, but because, to him, the label isn't the point. In interviews, he's been asked point blank about his sexuality. Is he gay? Bi? Straight? Fluid? And each time his answer is beautifully frustrating. It's not something I feel the need to explain. He once said, "I think sexuality is something that's fun. Honestly, who cares?" To some that might sound like evasion, but if you really listen, it's liberation. It's him saying, you don't owe anyone an explanation. And that, in itself, is an act of allyship. Because in a world obsessed with boxing people in, Harry shows us how powerful it is to exist outside the checkbox. He's not anti-label, he's just anti-pressure. And while he may not scream slogans, his actions, they whisper volumes. Let's talk about the flags. Everywhere Harry goes, so do the rainbows. He doesn't just tolerate pride flags in the audience. He lifts them, spins with them, holds them like sacred banners. We've seen him on stage mid-song, spot a rainbow flag and grin like a kid at Christmas, then drape it across his shoulders, never missing a beat. And if you've ever been to one of his concerts, you know it's not just a show. It's a safe space, a temporary universe where boys wear skirts, girls kiss girls, and nobody flinches. Where coming out is met with cheers, not silence. Literally. There have been countless moments when Harry has paused mid-performance just to spotlight a fan's handmade sign. Should I come out to my parents tonight? Help me tell my sister I'm gay. I'm non-binary and scared. And Harry, he stops, he reads, he smiles, then says something like, well, I think tonight is the night. He's done it in Manchester, in New York, in Sydney, in Seoul, all over the world, turning giant arenas into moments of personal revolution. And he doesn't have to do it. That's what makes it matter. Because allyship isn't just posting a rainbow in June. It's showing up, over and over, when no one's asking. He wears Pride merch, not just during Pride Month. He rocks nail polish, pearls, glitter, not to prove anything, but to normalize it. And through it all, there's this quiet message running beneath the surface. You're allowed. However you are, you're allowed. Now let's be real. Harry could have played it safe. He could have leaned into the rock star image, stayed vague, stayed silent, but instead he chose softness, he chose openness, he chose people over perception. He's told interviewers, I believe in kindness, in treating people with respect, in celebrating love in all its forms, not gay love, not straight love, just love. And that kind of neutrality, it's not passive, it's radical. Because in the world we live in, where queer kids still feel unsafe, where rights are still debated, where closets still exist, someone like Harry choosing love loudly and consistently isn't just beautiful, it's necessary. And no, he's not perfect. He's not trying to be a spokesperson. He's just living his truth while making room for others to live theirs. And that might be the most powerful part of all. He doesn't wave a flag to center himself. He waves it to say, I see you. He doesn't pause the show to look noble. He pauses it to say, you're not alone. He doesn't define himself because, in doing so, he helps redefine what normal even means. And when millions of people are watching, when your face is on magazines and your voice fills stadiums, that quiet resistance to the binary, that gentle celebration of queerness, without claiming it, that's not neutrality, that's revolution. And maybe that's why, beyond the music, beyond the fashion, people follow Harry. Not just because of who he is, but because of how he makes them feel. And here's where it gets beautiful. Some artists release albums, some artists sell out stadiums. But Harry, he accidentally built a sanctuary, a space where people, especially young queer fans, feel like they can exhale. Where being too much isn't too much. Where softness is strength, and glitter isn't ironic, it's holy. And the wildest part, he didn't build that space by standing at a podium or launching a campaign. He did it by showing up, again and again, exactly as he is. For so many young people, Harry Styles isn't just a pop star. He's a mirror. He's proof that you can be soft and strong, flirty and grounded, unsure and still worthy of applause. I mean, think about how rare that is. A male superstar, not just tolerating queer fans, but centering them, dancing with them, crying with them, laughing with them, celebrating them. It's no coincidence that when Harry walks on stage, the crowd erupts like it's a second Pride parade. There are more feather bows, crop tops, bisexual flags, and teary eye glitters than at a makeup artist convention in West Hollywood. And yes, they're screaming. But it's not just fangirl screaming, it's release. It's thank you for seeing me screaming. You know what makes it even more powerful? He never positioned himself as the savior. Never once said, "Look at me, I'm your hero." Instead, he just held the door open. And by doing that, he created room for a whole generation to walk through. We're already seeing it. The ripple effect. Artists like Conan Gray, who sings about heartbreak with no pronouns, letting listeners fill in their own truth. Troye Sivan, turning queer longing into pop art. Maneskin, blurring lines of gender and sexuality while shredding guitars in eyeliner and leather corsets. They all move through a space that Harry helped deconstruct. He didn't create the movement, but he normalized it. He added a softness to the loud, a wink to the revolution, a silk blouse to the thunder. And honestly, sometimes that's harder, because shouting gets attention. But Harry's approach? Whispering into a mic with painted nails, "You're free to be whoever you want to be," and meaning it? That's what stays with people. And it's not just fellow artists, it's fans who are changing. There are stories everywhere. Fans who came out after a concert, fans who wore their first dress to his show, parents who brought their trans kids to experience a place where they'd feel safe in their own skin. One fan wrote online, "I've been to 5 Harry shows. Each time I cried, not because of the music, but because I finally felt like I belonged somewhere." Now tell me that's just about the songs. Tell me that's not a form of ministry. And here's something else worth noting. Harry's never done the bare minimum. He doesn't just nod to the LGBTQ+ community for clout. He amplifies them, protects them, laughs with them, not at them. There's a moment in nearly every tour where he points to someone in the crowd and makes them feel like the only person in the arena. It's silly, it's charming, sometimes it's a wink, sometimes it's a "who's that person in the feather boa?" Sometimes it's just him helping someone come out, with 20,000 strangers cheering. But it's always real. And what does that do? It changes people. It gives them a memory they'll carry for the rest of their life. It tells them, "Hey, you matter, exactly as you are." How many artists can do that without saying a single line of activism? Harry Styles didn't set out to become a movement. He didn't go into music thinking, "One day I'll be the queer icon of Gen Z." But by simply choosing to be open, fluid, kind, he gave this generation something they rarely get from men in the spotlight: a hug, without conditions. And sure, some people still don't get it. They look at his nails, his pearls, his sheer jumpsuits and say, "What is he doing?" But you know what Harry would probably say? Having fun. And that, my friends, might just be the most radical message of all. Because in a world that can feel heavy, loud, divided, Harry reminds us of something beautifully simple: that joy can be powerful, that softness can be loud, and that freedom, sometimes it starts with a song and a boy in a dress. But here's the twist. Harry Styles didn't set out to become an icon. He never stood up and said, "Follow me." He never demanded a crown, and yet somehow it found him. And maybe that's the point. His legacy isn't being written in headlines or carved into trophies. It's happening, softly. In the people he's never met. In the kid who dared to wear pink to school. In the teen who brought their boyfriend to prom for the first time. In the mother who stopped saying "boys don't cry." He didn't need a slogan. He didn't give TED Talks. He just was. And in being himself, so unapologetically and so consistently, he gave the world something we rarely get from men in power, especially straight-passing men. He gave us silence, but not the kind that ignores injustice, the kind that listens, that steps aside and holds space. That lets others speak first. When fans chanted gay rights at his concerts, he smiled and lifted the flag. When a fan asked for help coming out, he paused the show and made sure everyone celebrated them. When critics demanded answers about his own sexuality, he shrugged and reminded us, "You don't have to label yourself to stand for love." He's never tried to control the narrative, never rushed to define himself to ease public curiosity. And in a time when everything is content and identity is constantly marketed, that restraint is radical. Because labels can be powerful, but for some, they can also feel like cages. And Harry, he chose openness. Not to be vague, but to be free. And by doing that, he handed that freedom to us. He showed us that masculinity doesn't have to be tight-fitted and buttoned up, that femininity isn't fragile, That beauty doesn't have to mean symmetry or seriousness. That being kind, truly kind, isn't a weakness, it's a decision, every day. He didn't turn his fame into a fortress, he made it into a window. And maybe that's why his influence runs so deep. Because it's not built on shock value, it's built on resonance. His fans don't worship him because he's perfect. They connect with him because he's present, because he sees them. And in a world that moves fast and often forgets the quiet ones, being seen is everything. There's a softness to Harry's impact that sneaks up on you. It doesn't scream, it doesn't beg for headlines, it lingers. It makes you think twice the next time you judge someone's outfit. It makes you pause when your kid paints their nails and you feel the urge to say no. It lives in the small shifts, the private ones, the kind no chart will ever capture. Think about it. He's one of the most famous artists on the planet. He sells out arenas, wins Grammys, headlines Coachella, but ask any longtime fan what matters most. And you probably won't hear watermelon sugar. You'll hear stories, moments, times when Harry's presence made them feel braver. He made vulnerability feel cool. He made kindness feel rebellious. He made being yourself feel like the most punk thing you could possibly do. And he didn't do it alone. He brought people along with him, his fans, his team, his collaborators, and gave credit freely. He modeled what it means to be a man in power without needing to dominate the room. He made space. And somehow, that changed the room entirely. That's the kind of legacy we rarely talk about. Not the kind where buildings get named after you, but the kind where 1,000 tiny moments ripple out and out and out until someone, somewhere, takes a breath and thinks, maybe I can live like that too. That's how movements grow. Not always in marches, but in mirrors. Not always in protests, but in permission. And Harry Styles? He gave us permission to paint our nails, to cry during a ballad, to hug our friends tighter, to flirt a little more freely, to not explain ourselves so damn much. And most importantly, to stand for love, even when we're still figuring out exactly who we are. So no, he never called himself a leader, never wore the label of activist or icon or revolutionary, but maybe that's exactly why he became all three. Maybe this is the real magic of Harry Styles. Not the stadium lights, not the award speeches, not even the chart-topping singles. It's the way he has made people feel, again and again, without ever telling them exactly how they should feel. He didn't arrive to fix anyone. He didn't claim to have the answers. He simply stood on stage, looked out into the blur of faces and feather bows, and let people know, without saying a word, that they mattered. Think about how rare that is. In an industry built on constant reinvention, where fame can feel like a full-time performance, Harry has found a way to be both the show and the sanctuary. He walks the tightrope between spectacle and sincerity, and somehow never loses his balance. Because for him, there's no act to keep up. The softness you see is the softness he lives. The laughter between songs isn't a rehearsed cue, it's the real thing. The way he lifts a flag or pauses mid-song to check on someone in the crowd, it's not strategy, it's instinct. And here's the thing about instincts. They reveal who you are when no one's looking. For Harry, the instinct is always kindness, always connection, always that small but radical choice to make a stranger feel safe. It's why people cry at his concerts without really knowing why. It's why fans who've never met each other dance together in glitter and sequins like they've been friends forever. It's why, long after the music fades, the feeling lingers, like perfume on a scarf you didn't mean to keep. Some artists change the charts. Some artists change the sound. Harry Styles? He's changing the temperature of the room, making it warmer, softer, brighter, so that when you leave, whether it's a concert, a video, or just a glimpse of him in an interview, you carry a little more courage into your own life. Maybe you wear the shirt you were scared to wear. Maybe you speak up for someone you used to stay silent for. Maybe you let yourself laugh too loudly, cry too openly, love too boldly. Because when someone like Harry stands in the spotlight and says through his actions, his clothes, his songs, it's okay to be fully yourself, it makes it just a little bit easier for the rest of us to believe it. And that's the ripple effect. It doesn't happen all at once. It's quiet like seeds under the soil, You don't see the roots forming. You just wake up one day and realize there's more color in the world than there used to be. More boys wearing pink, more girls cutting their hair short, more parents cheering at pride parades, more kids looking in the mirror and not flinching at what they see. And it's not because Harry Styles told them who to be. It's because he showed them what it looks like when someone is free. Freedom is contagious, so is kindness. And that combination? That's world-changing, even if it never makes the headlines. So maybe, years from now, people won't remember every lyric. Maybe they won't remember every outfit, but they will remember how they felt in his presence, whether that presence was in a packed arena or through a phone screen in the middle of the night. Safe, seen, unapologetically themselves. And if that's the legacy Harry Styles leaves behind, no scandal, no manifesto, no final word, just a trail of people who feel braver in their own skin, I can't think of anything more beautiful.